Sunday, May 25th, 2014, Kenrick Bebe Stephenson would stand at the front gate of his mansion in one of the richest communities in Jamaica, unaware that he was about to take his last breath. At this point, he was worth millions of dollars, but as records show, he had not been employed in almost 20 years. Many wondered how he got his money, but what they didn't know was that he was actually the first ever Jamaican to invent the idea of scamming. And with his unique methods, he would introduce the concepts to the rest of the island, creating from scratch an industry that now steals over $1 billion per year. And at the top of this food chain stood him. He made his way into politics, shook hands with government officials, and fed the streets with his stolen money. And the people loved him so much that despite him being openly gay in Jamaica, for a time he became one of the most powerful men the island had ever seen. But that's why it was so shocking that one day people would show up to his house and see him dead in his driveway. How did one of the most powerful men that even had the Jamaican police on his payroll manage to get done in? Well, we would come to learn that every system, even the ones that make you extremely rich and live like a king, can backfire. And to understand what I mean, we have to take it all the way back to where it began, in Granville, one of Montego Bay's most dangerous communities at the time. Poverty was a norm, and that was exactly where Bebe was born. But he was also born with a gift, the ability to talk your way in and out of every situation. And due to this skill, he was highly charismatic and able to talk to anybody, getting them to trust him within minutes. But for years, growing up around violence and poverty, that gift had nowhere useful to go. But in the late 1990s, that was all about to change. Around 1998, something arrived in Montego Bay that nobody could have predicted. American and Canadian companies looking for cheap English-speaking labor started setting up call centers right there in Jamaica. Airlines, credit card companies, and insurance firms, they all needed workers who could get on the phone with an American stranger and make their problems feel heard. And so upon employing Jamaicans, they would train them to do exactly that. On the surface, it was a great opportunity for those who needed work, and a greater opportunity for the American corporations that needed cheap labor to exploit and grow their pockets bigger. But these companies could not have possibly imagined that they were actually engineering their own downfall. Inside these call centers, they would train the Montego Bay workers how to build a connection with the client in seconds, how to keep them engaged on the phone, reading their emotions, and most importantly, guiding them to the most important information. I mean, seriously, these Americans were legit reading these guys their credit card numbers to make payments over the phone, just trusting that nothing would happen. And for a while, nothing did happen. After all, this is a normal job, right? But upon seeing this so many times, Bebe wondered, what if I could use this in a different way? Because at the end of his shifts, every day he would go back home to his poor community to struggle, while these Americans would call every day complaining about the stupidest of problems and just hand over their payment information like it was candy. And so while the Americans came here because they saw an easy profit, they were not the only ones with an eye for opportunity. After ideas started swarming Bebe's head, it was around this time that he would attempt scamming on his own. The idea was almost insultingly simple. You call an elderly American, you use the training you received from the call center to make them feel excited and tell them that they've won the lottery. Millions of dollars, maybe even a car. You build trust and excitement, but just before they can collect the fees, oh no, oh wait, something came up. There's been an issue with the funds and they now have to pay a small fee or tax or whatever you want to say, just a few $100s to release the millions that are waiting for them. And the moment they send that, there's another fee and another one after that. And you'd be surprised how people would just keep sending their money because they were already so invested, they believed it made no sense to stop now. Until one day the savings were gone and the voice on the other end of the phone stopped picking up. Once it worked the first time, Bebe had realized he had stumbled upon a gold mine, and he was the first to discover such an insane loophole. But he also cared for his people, and so instead of keeping the method to himself and just showing up one day with a Lamborghini, he decided to teach everyone else how to do what he did. He recruited other young men from Granville who he thought had potential, and best believe he trained them from scratch in the same way the call centers had trained him. And to how far his lessons went, eventually you could not walk through parts of the community without being surrounded by people who were involved in the scam or their families. And with so many feet on the ground, the money came fast, so much so that the neighborhood physically changed. Mansions went up on land where squatters used to live, and expensive cars that had no business being on those poor pothole-filled Jamaican roads were suddenly everywhere. And if they thought life had changed, they had no idea what was about to come. As Bebe's money grew, so did something else, his power. And I don't just mean the fact that he was funding the community so they were all loyal to him. I mean political power. Because Bebe would eventually become a prominent figure in the People's National Party, one of Jamaica's two dominant political groups, and was even elected vice chairman of the PNP's Western Central St. James constituency. And the level of power he was building made him basically untouchable. Because there's something else about Bebe that would shock you. He was gay, and I don't mean speculation. I mean he was openly interested in men in Jamaica, one of the most homophobic countries on earth. He would even dress femininely and throw drag parties, yet nobody dared to bother him or show him a hint of resistance. In fact, even police who knew he was a criminal would not dare raise a hand because they knew the kind of power they were dealing with. However though, no matter how untouchable somebody seems on the surface, the rule stands true that whether it's a ghetto youth or the president of the United States, all it takes is one guy who's determined enough to make something bad happen. And he would find that out soon enough. It was November of 2009, about 10 whole years since Bebe had started bathing in millions. Bebe was standing outside minding his own business when he noticed something strange. Suddenly, without any warning, shots went off, and before he got the chance to wonder if they were near or far, he had already been hit. While he was down, wondering if he was going to survive or not, the assailants would rush his home, stealing his car and other personal belongings. But luckily for Bebe, the bullet missed his vital organs and he was able to survive. But although he got lucky this time, this issue was actually a symptom of something greater. Because you see, in the 10 years or so that had passed, with all the people he taught how to scam and all the millions that were being brought into the country, the industry had grown so large and so profitable that gangs had started literally going to war with each other over it. And not even just to steal money, but fighting over what they call lead sheets. Lists of elderly American names and phone numbers, as well as whatever other information they could use in their scam. And trust me, these lists were more valuable than any dollar amount you could find. And so with people being hunted and killed for stolen leads, it's no surprise that Bebe was eventually targeted himself. However, he was still the top dog, and so to him, that didn't mean he needed to stop. Nah, that just meant he needed to protect himself better, possibly with more criminals and more weapons, right? I mean, yeah, he got shot once, but he lived, and I guess that comes with being a criminal leader, right? So hey. However, as much as his increased awareness and security would probably ward off criminals for now, somebody who would not give him the same grace was the legal system. The very same one he had been avoiding until now. By 2012, law enforcement had run out of patience. For years, many of them looked the other way. Some were possibly even on payroll, but one thing's for sure was that the good officers who hated injustice were sick and tired of watching this scheme take place. After all, the gang violence was starting to really get out of hand. And so, the anti-lottery scam task force had been watching Granville, and specifically Bebe, for years. And although literally everybody knew what was going on, the only thing that was missing was the moment to make their move. And in May of 2012, at approximately 5:30 in the morning, that moment would arrive. While everybody was asleep, the task force swept through multiple communities in St. James like a military force, sweeping down in authority and targeting suspects one by one. The students Bebe trained lifted, those who looked up to him and wanted to do the same in handcuffs. Even Bebe's own brother, a man by the name of Killer B, was taken in. And so it wasn't long before they found the boss himself and threw him in the back of a squad car. By the end of the operation, 28 people were in custody and over 11 high-end luxury vehicles had been seized off the streets that looked as poor as dirt. And so with pride, the police superintendent stood in front of cameras and said, Bebe is one of the founders of the illegal lottery scam. He has been living a luxurious lifestyle, yet he has never, from our understanding, been employed in any of the services in Jamaica. And maybe he thought he had him dead to rights, but something was wrong. As time went on, no matter how much evidence they seemed to have, the case just never went through. No matter how much they tried, roadblocks from within the system would keep on preventing any progress from being made. And that was when the dark truth became obvious. There were senior officers working in Bebe's interest, and as long as they were in his pocket, he would remain a free man. But luckily, there were other crimes he was doing, and so even if they couldn't get him on the big one, there must have been a way to send him to jail even for a time, right? So they tried with unlawful possession of property and illegally abstracting electricity. But once again, the charges were mysteriously dropped with no trial and no conviction. And that day, Bebe walked out even freer than the day he was brought in, because now he knew for sure that his guys would come through for him, and if he felt untouchable before, before, you can imagine how he felt now. And so instead of viewing this as a near miss and laying low, he went right back to his old life and did exactly the things that he had always been doing. But once again, even if the legal system can't pin you down, something that a person is always vulnerable to is the consequences of their own actions. Because while the legal system was powerless to Bebe's influence, the opposite could be said for his own system that he built around himself. A system that would ultimately betray him in the end. After damn near 15 years of consistent scamming, Bebe was richer than you could possibly imagine and was now directly responsible for the fact that Jamaican scammers stole over $300 million every single year from Americans. Documentaries and articles credited him as the godfather of lottery scamming, creating this with his bare hands. And so among this empire of hundreds of millions, he stood at the top. But when it comes to money, power, and gang warfare, the thing about the top spot is that there's always somebody wanting to take your place. And as untouchable as Bebe felt, that would all change on Sunday, May 25th, 2014. It was 8:30 p.m. in Ironshore, Montego Bay, one of the most expensive streets in all of Jamaica, where Bebe now lived after moving out of Granville. Bebe stood at the entrance of his massive mansion, relaxed as anybody would be on a Sunday night, chilling and having a conversation with two other men. But it was during that chat that they saw something moving in the distance. As the movement got closer, they realized it was a man. But they didn't know this guy, and he was moving with a pace that was too fast for any Sunday evening stroll. And so before Bebe and his friends could even have time to realize what this was and say, oh shit, this man reached into his waist and out emerged a gun. And in the span of a few milliseconds, bullets were flying through the air. Moments passed, and while Bebe's friends were unharmed, the godfather of the Jamaican lottery scam laid there on the ground in his own blood. And the unknown assailant would disappear into the night as quickly as he emerged. Literally within the hour, the Jamaica Gleaner had reporters on the scene, and what they would find outside that gate was not typically what you would expect of a usual crime scene. It wasn't just police, it was a whole crowd. Political figures standing behind the yellow tape, people who had grown up with him in Granville, people whose lives he had changed, and people who genuinely loved him. They wondered why, but despite their tears, the person who pulled that trigger has never publicly been identified. But although Bebe was gone, the scam he created still lives on, and today, Jamaican scammers reportedly pull in over $1 billion every year, with scamming music being arguably the most popular genre of Jamaican songs at this current moment. He gave his life to make that money, and maybe to some, it's worth it to live fast and die young. But as Bebe's funeral would come and he would lay there in a casket that was, I kid you not, literally made out of gold, one can only wonder if he was reconsidering that question. But speaking of Jamaican scammers, somebody else from Montego Bay who used these tactics to his advantage was able to scam a single elderly American woman for over $300,000, using an elaborate scheme to get her to send her life savings over and over and over again. And he was somehow able to escape with no consequences. And if you want to learn about that story, click the video on your screen right now. Subscribe to the channel for more, and as always, this case has been decoded.